Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Horizon 2026, the Global MSME Summit and Awards, a platform built to accelerate MSME transformation, global collaboration, and future-ready leadership. Over the next 2 days, we bring together innovators, policymakers, entrepreneurs, and ecosystem builders shaping the MSME economy of tomorrow as we move into a decade defined by digital acceleration, sustainability, and cross-border collaboration. MSMEs stand at the center of economic transformation. My name is Ritika Azraya Kurvilla. I am Chief Editor of Sustainomics and Head of Media and Publishing at GCPIT, and I have the privilege of moderating today's sessions. So let's begin. To begin with, our first speaker is the wonderful Shelley Brunswick, a global leader in space innovation and workforce transformation. She's built bridges across governments, academia, industry, and startups, always with one goal: expanding access to innovation. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be with you today, and congratulations on this incredible program.
Thank you, and we'd love to hear from you.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to starting talking about what I say is the space mindset. So I'm going to bring up a few slides and share what does the space mindset mean, and how does that help the entrepreneurs and the investors that are listening today. Now, the space mindset consists of three main components. It's about building markets, building talent, and then building scale. When we think about new markets, we may not be thinking about the space economy as being part of that infrastructure. We certainly see rockets taking off, but you don't have to be a rocket scientist or an astronaut to be building new markets utilizing space technology. What you can look at is creating businesses using that space technology. So you can look at rideshare apps. You know, in the US, we have Uber and Lyft, and those are using GPS. You're looking at precision agriculture that's also using GPS. The financial markets are using navigation and timing from satellites. You're seeing how insurance companies are using weather data and also Earth observation, as well as telemedicine. So we're seeing how the space industry is allowing entrepreneurs around the world to create new businesses. And one of those I'm going to highlight is Dr. Nicole Wagner, who's pictured here. Now, while she was a graduate student, and I know you're doing work in Boston, she was a graduate student getting her PhD in Boston. She realized that there was this disease called macular degeneration that causes older people to lose their sight, and there was no cure. But what she realized, there may be a way to 3D print a protein lens replacement that could give people back their sight. So this is a business, it's a biotech, not related to the space industry, but the challenge was 3D printing on Earth, that protein layer did not work because there was a lot of air bubbles and anomalies because of printing. But what she learned was by printing in orbit, printing in microgravity environment on the International Space Station, created a better protein replacement lens. And so she's been working with companies like SpaceX and Space Tango to 3D print and go through the trials to demonstrate how her lens replacement could eventually give people back their sight. And again, not a traditional space company, but utilizing space to create a new business and solve challenging problems right here on Earth. So as we think about that space economy, we're looking at how it's going to grow. Right now in 2023, the space economy was $630 billion, according to the World Economic Forum, and it's going to grow to $1.8 trillion by 2035, if not more. And companies like Lambda Vision with Dr. Nicole Wagner are not even really considered space companies. They're considered biotech companies. They're just using that space as a form of infrastructure to create their product. So we're seeing how space is really providing almost 80% of the space economy is commercial. It's those products and services that we're using every day. And since we're talking a lot about small and medium-sized entrepreneurs today, I want to highlight the role and the importance that those small and medium-sized entrepreneurs and enterprises represent. They are 90% of our businesses globally, and they employ almost 70% of the workforce. as well as they generate 50% of global GDP. So when we think about small and medium-sized companies, 1 in every 5 large companies today was at one time a small and medium-sized company. So many people have talked about SpaceX because they recently did an IPO, but at one time, 20 years ago, they were a small startup company that were trying to change the way we did launch in the US and around the world. And so, what are we looking at when we think about building those markets and the technologies? And I talk about space as a form of infrastructure, but what I'm also seeing is how space and other technologies like artificial intelligence, cyber, biotech are coming together to solve challenges. And my example with Dr. Nicole Wagner was an example of you can be looking at biotech as well as space technology, but we're also seeing how almost every sector is now incorporating some form of artificial intelligence. So you can see these emerging technologies, but also look at how they're converging to cause disruption as entrepreneurs and innovators. And we also see where the space economy is creating that infrastructure for market disruption and opportunity. The space economy is actually part of every one of these economies. We certainly have a space economy, which is on the far right. Space, that's your rockets, satellites, astronauts. But space is also intersecting every one of these other market segments. I talked about precision agriculture for farmers, but farmers are also using Earth observation to monitor their crops. So in agriculture, we can see how finance is using space technology. So, as your entrepreneurs today are thinking about disruption and moving forward and having that global advantage, they can look at how not only space technology can support their business and help them expand, but how it can help them create new markets in these different market segments. So, that's about building new markets. But of course, none of this is possible without building talent and hiring the right people, because infrastructure will create opportunity and entrepreneurs build those markets, but people drive the competitive advantage. So, how do you find that competitive talent? And there are a number of ways to look at it. You can look at skill sets. You can look at, some people call them soft skills. I call them essential skills. Are they good communicators? Are they team players? Do they demonstrate leadership capability? So, these are things that you can look at as you're hiring not only the technical competency, but also those essential skills for how talent and people will create disruption in the marketplace. We can also look at, for those who are watching and wondering how do they get into technology areas, you can look at, obviously you can apply for jobs and roles, but if you're looking to fill some skill gaps, you can also look at formal education, informal education, online certificate programs, even volunteering opportunities. Volunteering for maybe nonprofits that might have roles that you could volunteer for to help you shore up your skill set, but not only shore up your skill set, when you volunteer to support those other organizations, you're adding new opportunities to build your network and find where there might be unique job opportunities. So, building talent is also important for the small and medium sized entrepreneurs, but it's also important for individuals who are looking for new job opportunities to look for these companies. Because again, they're hiring 70% of the workforce around the world, and how individuals can create the skills that they need to be competitive as they're looking for career opportunities. And as I said, there's no single pathway, multiple ways, whether it's formal education, informal, fellowships, apprenticeship programs. There's many ways to build the skill sets that are needed in today's disruptive world. Now, the third component of the space mindset is about building scale. Every entrepreneur I meet, they want to grow. They might start locally and then they expand geographically to their region, and then they want to expand globally. So, building scale is critical as we think about growing and scaling. And we can look at a number of things. How do you take your product that may eventually, like Dr. Nicole Wagner, that was created in a lab, but how do you scale that throughout the ecosystem and take it from the lab into production? How do you have public-private partnerships, partnering with government and industry to create opportunities? How do you partner with academia? So building scale is about taking things from that initial creation from a lab or small production run to full scale. And it's also about building those strategic partnerships. One of the partnerships I always like to highlight is those international partnerships, because when we partner internationally, we look at creating shared standards. We look at policy alignments. You want to open businesses and have opportunities in countries that have policies and laws that support your business. You also look at data sharing because you build trust and the ability to grow your business, and cross-border investment. That's a big part. When we were talking earlier, we talked about how you're creating an innovation hub that's both in India and in Boston, building those international alliances. Now, one of the international alliances I share is the Artemis Accords, which is how we're returning to the moon as the United States and allied partners, as humanity, and this time returning to the moon, but this time to stay. And so that's the Artemis Accords. We can also look at those international partners providing business opportunities. So, in the space industry, an amazing organization that supports business growth with commercialization is the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. They highlight how developing countries can increase their GDP by working together and implementing these technologies, especially space technologies. And they offer training and programs that do that. Some of them are free online courses. So, for your inspiring individuals who are looking for new careers and opportunities, there are free online courses through the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. And for businesses, they are offering opportunities to have partnerships to use space as a form of infrastructure to grow your business, but also for the country leaders who are listening. They also provide training programs for universities and entrepreneurs and governments so you can look at how you can grow and scale your country's GDP. So, as we think about scaling with that space mindset, we have to think about thinking about globally from day one. Now, yes, you're going to start small and create your business model locally, regionally, nationally, and then internationally. And each one of those market segments requires a positioning statement. It requires market analysis to determine who are your stakeholders, who is your customer. But you should always be thinking about from the beginning of your business, how could you grow this business internationally? You can also look at thinking of it as a system and not a silo. Sometimes we think about things in silos, quarterly reports or a technology. But again, think about things as ecosystems. How do you expand? How do you grow? How do you partner? And then lead your business across cultures. So as we think about space, I'm not really thinking about space as outer space. I'm really thinking about space as leadership and how it's the differentiator of how we think as leaders, as entrepreneurs, and as investors. So I want you all to adopt a space mindset. Think big, act boldly, and lead with curiosity and foresight. I want you to also invest in innovation. Think about those emerging technologies I shared. How can you use space technology and emerging technologies to create new solutions to real world problems here on Earth? How can you collaborate for that impact? How can you build and scale with those partners, both government, academia, and industry, to drive those changes that can solve challenges? How do we empower that next generation? How do we create the workforce we need today, but also invest in it for tomorrow? Because the real frontier of space is not really above us, it's within us. And so it's how we choose to lead as those entrepreneurs and investors that will define the future. So again, I'm Shelley Brunswick. I'm going to take my slides down in case there are any questions you'd like to add. And again, I'm excited to be here with you to talk about the space mindset, building market, talent, and scale, and kick off this amazing 2-day program. So I am open to any questions if there are any that have come in from the audience, or if you have any, or if we have time for questions. I see one from Santosh. How do you drive partnerships in the space economy? Excellent question. Well, the first thing I'm going to say is life is about relationships. It's about building relationships. Santosh, you even mentioned to me how we originally partnered more than 5 years ago during COVID, and we built a relationship. We've worked together, we've built trust. So when you're looking at partnerships, at the end of the day, you're looking at how you're building relationships with people, people in institutions, in governments, and those require building trust, taking time to understand and listen to others, learn from that, and then lead and find ways to work together to build the trust. So it doesn't happen overnight. It does take time. And it's also about doing what you say you'll do. If you commit to do something, then follow through on that. That's also really part of it. One of my great friends, Gabrielle Goddard, who's from New Zealand but lives in London, she shares with me that Kiwis, that's what they call New Zealanders, Kiwis are very good for being known for we do what we say and we say what we do. And so building trust, not only um, to build those partnerships, but to deliver for all your stakeholders. It's really about building the relationship. So thank you, Santosh, for that excellent, excellent question. And I do want to highlight this isn't just for business leaders. This is for everyone listening, for college students, high school students, individuals who are out there. Build your network. Find like-minded organizations, join them, create relationships, show up, support others, contribute. And so building relationships is really important to building partnerships.
I think especially at a time when AI and being online is so big, building actual relationships makes a difference, right?
Absolutely. What I'm seeing is a little bit of backlash with AI. I mean, I think AI has a wonderful place to support humanity, to help us come to solutions faster. But what I'm also noticing is that people really want to interact with people. And so I think AI is one of those partners, one of those tools that can help benefit businesses and individuals. But we also really need to remember the human aspect and that building relationships and trust is really about working together and working with each other. So thank you for highlighting the importance of AI as every day we hear about how AI is doing new and different things. But at the end of the day, AI, your chatbot is not a person and they can give you incorrect information. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for leaving us with this concept of the real frontier of space is not above us, but within us. I think that's a huge thing as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. And until next time, I'm Shelley Brunswick, and I look forward to seeing you around the galaxy.